Brits could be facing even more strikes over the next few months, with more than 115,000 Royal Mail workers voting today on whether to walk out over pay.
Just one of several industries facing disruption. Who is to blame? Going to discuss that shortly. First, though, polling for this programme suggests that support for the strikers is growing. Ranveer has more.
Yeah, so polling for GMB by Opinion shows that 45% of those that were surveyed support strike action. This has grown, in fact, by 7 percentage points since the first rail strike last Tuesday. Now, these results come as Brits brace themselves for more strike chaos over the summer. The RMT union has warned train strikes could continue until September. We have British Airways staff who are expected to stage a walkout in July, and post office workers are also due to strike in July. On top of this, there could also be strikes from Royal Mail workers and teachers. NHS doctors and GPs have also said industrial action is likely as they demand a whopping 30% pay rise over the next 5 years.
OK, well, joining us now, Dave Ward, who is General Secretary of the Communication Workers Union. Now, it's members in 2 companies balloting on strikes this week, post office workers and also Royal Mail workers. And alongside him, Matthew Lesh is from the Institute of Economic Affairs. Very good morning to you both.
Morning. Good morning.
Dave, how likely do you think it is that we will see hold-ups to postal deliveries, postal services this summer?
Well, look, we're balloting at the moment. The
Yeah.
ballot starts today. I think we're very convinced that the anger of our members will ensure that we get a really big yes vote. But the objective, Susanna, is never to have a strike. The objective is to reach a fair settlement for workers.
What are you after? What have you been offered?
Well, I mean, we've been offered, well, we haven't been offered, they've imposed a 2% pay rise on postal workers. They ended negotiations and decided to take action. Now, this is against a background in Royal Mail that they made record profits last year.
Are we talking about a 2% on both post office workers and Royal Mail workers? Are you talking
No, they're 2 separate companies.
Yes.
We've got a separate dispute in the post office. But if I could come back to the circumstances of the company, you know, they made 758 million. They paid 400 million to shareholders. And the CEO of the company who decided to impose a pay deal of 2% has just received a £140,000 bonus for hitting all of their targets. And I think this is a question of fairness. I think there's something very deeper going on where I genuinely believe that people across the UK are saying enough's enough.
Matthew, this is, you know, something that we all realise actually through the pandemic about how some people aren't paid enough for the jobs they do. The people we're talking about here, postal workers, you know, train drivers, they kept the economy going. Yet, you know, and as Dave pointed out, the bosses, who were probably sat at home during the pandemic, are getting £140,000 bonuses, are on a package worth, I mean, you know, the Royal Mail boss is on a package worth £753,000. Something is not right here, isn't it?
Look, I think we should absolutely respect the great work that so many workers have done across industries. When it comes to these pay negotiations, though, we need to be realistic. Yes, Royal Mail had a good year last year, but the projections ahead for Royal Mail aren't particularly good. We've got a reducing number of package deliveries after COVID as a result of the fact that people are ordering online less. We have rising input costs for a lot of companies. Something like Royal Mail, obviously, they use a lot of fuel and fuel prices are going up, just for one example. And the kind of demands the unions are making would effectively drive these companies bust. I mean, there's not enough profit margin for a 10% pay rise for all workers.
The trouble is, Matthew, that argument says that each individual worker should make a sacrifice because of the state of the industry. But that doesn't change the circumstances of the individual worker.
No, absolutely not. And I can fully respect people wanting to demand pay rise.
Yeah.
I think everyone should be perfectly entitled to do so. It's about what is reasonable and necessary. And what the unions, I think, should be doing is actually working quite collaboratively with the companies, thinking about things like how can we boost productivity? What are the worker practices that are old-fashioned that could therefore enable people to be paid more? Royal Mail is a very old company. They're traditionally a letters company, but these days they make more of their money from packages. It's a highly competitive industry. You've got a lot of new companies where people are paid something like 40% less compared to Royal Mail workers that they're trying trying to compete with. Now, Royal Mail might provide a great service, and there's a lot of disappointing fact about the fact that Royal Mail is consistently failing to meet their service delivery targets. I'd like to see that fixed. I'd like to see the unions work with Royal Mail to improve the quality of service and get paid more in the process.
Dave, have you done that? Have you been speaking to Royal Mail
I mean, I
about
don't know
processes?
who Matthew represents, but I suspect he represents the bosses, the industry that are playing out a free card trick here, and it's going on right across the UK. And what's actually happening, I mean, modernisation, this debate about modernisation, we need to have this in a more open way. We have done more modernisation agreements. Every year we end up doing a modernisation agreement. It never stops, it never will, we understand that. But let me be absolutely clear, modernisation in the UK today in a lot of big businesses is about making people work harder and faster for less. It's a levelling down agenda. It's not a levelling up agenda. Productivity and boosting productivity, we're always doing that. We're always getting agreements that make people have to go and ask some of the workers who are struggling. And I think there's a fundamental flaw in the system. The problem, and I think people have woken up to it in the UK, the fundamental issue that is the common denominator to all of the challenges that we're facing at the moment is the reality that there's a deep structural imbalance of power and wealth in this country. And it doesn't matter what the crisis is, the next thing they'll be saying is if you ask for more, it's like Oliver in the film, if you go up and ask for more, there's someone standing there telling you, more? How dare you? This is going to happen, that's going to happen. There's always another crisis, and it's always workers that pay the price, and people have had enough.
Matthew, it does seem that public support, because our polling happened over a week in which there were 3 rail strikes, a number of local transport strikes, and the ongoing impact of other action. But public support seems to be growing. Now, that's going to be an issue, isn't it, for the government who want to say striking is damaging, you know, trying to pin it on the Labour Party. How are they going to achieve a breakthrough here which has the public on their side, but also helps to dispel this action, which, frankly, whether you support it or not, is incredibly disruptive?
Well, I mean, I think this is a difficult political case for the government. I mean, they've tried to obviously make an effort here to spin this as the Labour Party's fault. Labour Party haven't really taken a strong position. I mean, but
also, Labour Party haven't been in power for 12 years.
Well, indeed. I don't think that really works as a strategy. What I'd like to see is talking about what we're realistically saying here is if these people want big pay rises, somebody has to pay. And there isn't not enough profit. The top bosses of these companies make a good buck, but they don't make enough to pay for pay rises for all their staff. Ultimately, if you have a huge increase in pay for posties, that means higher costs to send letters, means higher costs for small businesses to send packages, makes it harder for Royal Mail to compete with other providers of services. You know, there's a cost here. We put up a big pay increase to the rail workers. That sounds great. I'm sure it would be great for them, but that would mean higher prices for rail tickets. It would mean more taxpayer subsidy to the rail system in the context of reducing passenger numbers. There's a cost here to increasing these pay. You can't just say that there's a power imbalance when, in fact, there is a substantial cost to the customers, to society, to these companies, and that you can't make ridiculous pay claims that aren't going to be affordable.
I think people, and the trouble is, people understand both sides of the argument. I wonder, Dave, whether the outcome will be, unfortunately, as much as people understand that public sector workers have not perhaps had a fair deal, that you do end up being turkeys who vote for Christmas because your jobs, you know, reduce and things get outsourced, and things are cheaper when they're private.
You've absolutely hit the nail of some of the problems. It's the structural problems of how the economy is run, how businesses operate that have got to change. And I think what people haven't picked up, I mean, a dispute over pay is a dispute over pay. At some point, there'll be settlements, people will hopefully get round the table and you get the deal that's certainly better than what's happening at the moment. But underneath that, we're pushing a campaign that all the unions in the UK have signed up to, and I believe a lot of community organisations as well, that's being led by ordinary people. It is about a new deal for working people and a new social settlement in the UK. And I think it's time to challenge some of the fundamentals of how the economy operates. And I believe, like businesses, you know, there should be pay ratios between the heads of businesses and the workers. And you can create, in a company like Royal Mail, we are, you know, I'd love to sit and talk to you about what's actually going on in Royal Mail, because it's the union that comes to the table with the modernisation ideas. We want to expand the role of postal workers, build on the asset that is a postal worker. This is going on across all... It's the bosses who haven't got the ideas to grow businesses.
Okay.
Dave, I imagine we'll be speaking to you again on this show at some point throughout,
Yeah, thanks
throughout the summer.
both very much indeed.
Dave Ward, thank you. And thank you, Matthew Lesh from the Institute of Economic Affairs.
I mean, the fact remains, when you know, we've got a printout of all the industrial action that's currently taking place. Of course, you've got the barristers on strike, and that interrupts, you know, the fair process of justice. Train and tram strikes starting today, bus strikes in Yorkshire. You've got the postal workers strikes, Royal Mail, British Airways bus strikes, RMT, TSSA, BT, doctors, Scottish schools, teachers, nurses. You know, when we talk about back to the 70s and a winter of discontent, it looks like a summer of discontent, doesn't it?